Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow. We are back here in Studio 130 for another fun-filled, action-packed episode of the gold standard in Iowa conservative podcasts. John Hendrickson and myself today. We're going to edit that out later, John. Yeah. The soundboard sort of attacked us. That's a throwback. That's a throwback
construction update.
It's a construction update,
yeah.
Which my dad gave me a hard time recently. Did I tell you about this?
No.
That I had never actually given a construction update. Because he actually, for some reason, was curious. It wasn't just for our benefit. The construction is apparently done, and it's a thing. Mm-hmm. It's got some tables on it. Now, you claim you've seen somebody out there once, but I have not. So we got a new patio with stuff. And it's great. So, okay, we have got a lot to cover today, John. Before we get any further, I want to make sure that folks know that we're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're across all major audio platforms. So if you can't find us, it's probably your fault. And so we just remind that we do want to get y'all seeing us on video, and we're excited about the future of that platform and hopefully upgrading what we have to offer. One of the main reasons for video, though, is because we have John's stuff. Yeah. And so we're going to have to breeze through because, John, you brought a lot of stuff today.
Yes,
and since a lot of our friends aren't on the video yet, so we got to kind of set the stage for them. So anyway, so John's got stuff. Let's go through it. And one of these, the one there on the bottom, you've already peeked at if you're on video, but let's have at it. What do you got?
The first one I got in the mail from maybe a listener, and it was someone from Oklahoma who actually sent this, and it's
we're big in Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's an address by President Hoover that he gave here in Des Moines in October of 1932.
Oh, wow.
And so it's, and the envelope just said Hoover on it.
Huh.
So it's,
wow.
Yeah.
All right.
And the second one is one I ordered from an antique store. Mm-hmm. It's an old publication called The Defender, and it's put out by the American Protective Tariff League. And it's called American Tariffs from Plymouth Rock to McKinley, a complete and impartial history of our tariff systems.
It sounds subversive. That sounds like something that would like you'd be driven from polite society for nowadays.
So this
is
Defender. This is published in 1892.
Wow, that's cool.
This book.
All right.
And then finally, this is the treasure I was really waiting for. This is a signed copy by Herbert Hoover himself of the Challenge to Liberty, and it was to Elon H. Hooker, with kind regards of Herbert Hoover. And Hooker was he may have been the Elon Musk of his era. He was one of the larger electronics manufacturer in New York at the time. Huh. And so Hoover sent him a complimentary copy of that book and signed it.
Oh, that's
and
fantastic.
So I'm going to add that to my library.
Now it's in your hands.
Yes, yeah. Fantastic. I couldn't pass that. And finally, just another piece. This is from the 2000 presidential election.
Okay.
Pat Buchanan was an independent candidate, Reform Party nominee, and he ran with a lady by the name of Zola Foster from California, who, if you look at Foster on C-SPAN, the old videos, it's amazing. She talks a lot about a lot of the stuff we're struggling with today, especially on the social issues. She was a strong social conservative, strong defender of bringing sanity back, especially to education and bringing family values back. But Buchanan and Foster campaign sign.
So I wonder if that's maybe something that we can feature in the studio down the road.
Yes, I'd love to.
That'd be wonderful. And finally, President Hoover himself is back here at the table.
Yes, So thanks to our colleague Caleb, who reminded me this morning.
Reminded you on the way in. Yeah. So okay. Well, it's all wonderful. We want to kind of do this from time to time, and John can share some of his new pieces of the collection of the library and various artifacts. Okay, one piece of kind of news that's current right now, John, that I want to just touch on real quick is, and I'm gonna take this from the Des Moines Register, which is this idea that school budget delays. Did you see this morning that, the schools are lamenting that because the legislature hasn't set the school funding per pupil amount for the year, they're experiencing all sorts of trouble. Mm-hmm. In Iowa law, it's supposed to be done in the first 30 days of session so that the schools can then move on to do their budgets. And I suppose that's good to give them as much heads up as possible. However, the legislature has not arrived at what that number is, right? So you glanced at this article. The one thing that over and over is said is the real challenge is not all the different things that schools do. It's their union contracts, is that they haven't been able to settle with the unions.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's the only reason that we need a race to get this done, I guess I'm somewhat less sympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your take is on that, but
well, I think that's right. And the other thing I think it is it's a way for, and to a certain extent we're seeing local governments do the same thing, but I think it's a way for school districts to demonize the whole process and blame the legislature for, one, not adequately funding public education, but also saying that, and they can't seem to come to a compromise on the school funding for this fiscal year, and it's causing us this heartache, and it's a way, I think, you're absolutely right. It probably centers on the union contracts, but it's a way to demonize the Republicans by making them look like, one, they're incompetent, and also that they don't care about public education. And I think that's one frustrating thing I think I get from all this.
Yeah, and I get you can't spend the money until you know you have it, right?
Yeah.
The Senate's been at 2.5, I believe. The House is at 3. Pretty likely they end up somewhere in between those two numbers. I suppose they could not act on it. I mean, that's legally the legislature, I think, binds them to doing this since they write the law themselves. But the one thing, and I actually thought Des Moines Public Schools in here, and you talk about it, for internal budget calculations, Des Moines Public Schools are using a 2% SSA estimate. That estimate is based on a 10-year average. That actually seems pretty reasonable to me.
Yes, yeah.
It's
absolutely.
Lower, it's conservative, it's lower, kind of talking about the local government angle. But I mean, it's lower than what's going through the legislature. It's a historic average. I'd actually buy that. Now, what's interesting is when they calculated the tax rate, they went with 4%. Now, at first glance, it's like, you got to be kidding me. They're going for more. But the law allows them to cut down on that, but not go above it.
Yes, yeah.
So that's just to make sure. And I don't know. That seems all of that seems reasonable to me at Des Moines Public Schools.
Yeah.
And they interview
and I think it's you and I've talked about this. It is kind of been a strange session.
Uh-huh.
And so there's just been a lot of budget targets are something they need to take very seriously, and it's just been taking a little more extra time to come to an agreement on that.
Yep.
But I still think education loves to politicize these things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, here's bottom line for me. If they have to take an extra month or two to get that number down to something affordable for the taxpayers, then please go ahead and take your time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's good. I just want to put in a plug too, John, because I don't think we should let an episode go by right now without reminding folks about our upcoming local budget review hearings.
Yes, yeah.
You probably, since the last time that you've listened to the podcast, gotten your official notice in the mail. Mm-hmm. Now, you got yours, John.
I did, yes.
This is the form that you're going to have 3 different chunks to it. Mm-hmm. It's going to have, I don't know what order they're in. I can't remember. I think it's city, county, school.
Yes,
I believe is the order then. And it gives you the time and the place that you can go to the hearing in a relatively, I don't want to be too pejorative on it, but difficult to digest set of numbers. Is that fair?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What very quickly, what should folks look for on that, and where can they find more answers?
Well, first, the most important thing you want to look for is the time and location of that budget hearing. So if you're concerned about your tax bill and you want to voice your opinion, this is the time to do it.
Because this is where they're going to actually set the amount of spending.
Yes.
They're going to say, how much money can we get from you and how much money can we spend? Mm-hmm. That's not done in the summer when you get your assessment notice.
No,
this is
right
the
now.
time, folks.
Yeah. So in this case, if you're silent, it's basically giving your local officials a green light to move forward with the status quo. So if you want a lower tax bill, now's the time to speak up. And I know it's intimidating. I'm going to go. I believe West Des Moines is having their budget meeting tonight, and I'm going to attend.
Oh, great!
Yeah,
that's one of the earlier ones.
Yes,
I think.
yeah,
So good.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be good. And correct me if I'm wrong, John, but okay, I was burying the lead there. ITR has a property tax budget calculator where you can go and you take that form, you put in your assessed value from this year and last year, and it will tell you exactly what that comes out to for you. Because the one piece that's missing that would be the most valuable on these forms is what changes in my own bill.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, but we've run the numbers on some of our own jurisdictions and around the state of Iowa, and West Des Moines is actually doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I think that I don't remember what the levy rate was, but you're actually going to see the city portion of your property taxes go down. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah.
I believe one of our colleagues was examining all of our, and I was a lucky winner of being the higher tax bill in our office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good for you.
So
it's going to come out of your come out of your collectible budget.
That's right.
Probably.
Yeah.
So instead of being able to get more Hoover memorabilia, it's going straight to the government.
That's right. Yeah. And that's what I'm going to say tonight.
Yeah. I think that in areas like, we're here in the west suburbs of Des Moines, which is a high growth area, is that some of that reduction in what we have to spend at the city level is driven by growth in the cities. And that's all understood. And not every community in Iowa has that. And so it's different. And again, all we're trying to do is get information out to folks so that they can make that decision. Yeah. Now, on the flip side, because I live in Urbandale, you live in West Des Moines, both of those communities, our city portion is going down at a tremendous increase at the county level.
Yes, yeah.
Is Dallas County, we have the lowest tax rate in the state of Iowa right now, but at least on mine is about a 15% increase in year over year what I pay to county government. That's striking to me. And
yes.
And we've heard from a lot of folks specifically in Dallas County, but around the state, that really don't understand that and want to go get some answers.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to watch. But I had to put the plug in for those
Mm-hmm.
forms, the calculator.
Yeah.
Go to itrlocal.org, and it's right there. And you can just plug the numbers in and get that exact answer of what this means to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, John. I wanted to get to this earlier than 12 minutes in, but we've sort of done this before, but I've got a new special segment, and I just thought of this morning. And I don't have a name for the segment yet, but it's sort of a lightning round. Okay. And you and I collectively are not immune from a good conspiracy theory.
Yes, yeah.
Right? We kind of enjoy this. So I'm going to read some different issues, and I want your lightning round take.
Okay.
Is just straight up normal thing or conspiracy theory? Like, are you putting your tinfoil hat on?
Yeah.
Or as we were talking about, we were talking about the Dukes of Hazzard movie, and the guy with the armadillo hat.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe this is the armadillo round. I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, so... All right. So you're going to tell me accident or foreign terrorism.
Okay.
The Key Bridge disaster in Baltimore, Maryland.
Accident.
Okay. So John's going to stay with that one. Sean Diddy Combs is just run-of-the-mill sex offender or Epstein 2.0? Did I throw you for a loop? You don't even know who that is?
Yeah, I saw it on the news. I'm going to say...
Because he's already flown to the Caribbean in his private jet and is on the run because they raided his house. And he's got tapes of everyone.
Yeah, he's I mean, everyone's... everyone has a right to be guilty, presumed innocent before
but that's not here on the ITR Live podcast, John.
I'm going to say guilty.
You're just going to say guilty?
Yeah,
well, I know the guy's guilty.
Yeah.
Well, is he actually pulling a full Epstein where he's got clips of powerful people and working for foreign intelligence?
Yeah.
So John's got the tinfoil hat on
I'm going to say
okay.
Epstein. Yeah.
All right. And look, some of these are tragedies, and I don't want to make too much light of them, but the Princess of Wales, everything's copacetic now. She's simply a cancer survivor, or is there more to it? Are they still hiding something from us?
They're hiding.
Yeah. John's got tinfoil hat on the royal family.
There's something suspicious about that.
All right. We've talked about this one in the office, John. Brigitte Macron, man or woman? Was she born a man or a woman?
I'm going to say man.
Oh, okay, there we go. That's what I would. So that might have been a little bit arcane for some. Brigitte Macron is the First Lady of France, ostensibly the wife of Emmanuel Macron. Which the part of this is known fact is that she's 25 years older than he is, and they met when she was his teacher in high school. I mean, he's 45 and she's 70.
Wow.
And
I didn't realize he was that young.
Yeah, no, I think they actually met when he was 14.
Wow.
And she was, in her, I guess, late 30s as his teacher. So the whole now it's France, so everything's just kind of, there's really no rules over there on these kinds of things. Yeah. But yeah, no, there was a big report from some investigative journalists that there's really very little record of her, any pictures or anything before the age of 30, and that she. But anyway. I actually think that's probably I'm going to say she's probably woman, and I'm not putting the tinfoil hat on her, but it's an interesting watch. The also thing is that she's connected with the Rothschild family, so which anyway that kind of makes it even more fun. Yeah. Last one. Responsible party for the Moscow Concert Hall massacre: ISIS, Zelensky, or Russian FSB?
I'm going to say Zelensky.
You think Zelensky did it? All right. I think FSB had a hand in it somehow. Those guys are crooked. Yeah. All right. Okay. There's the lightning round. I don't know if we sold it right, but John's the source. He's gonna on all of these things. So anyway, okay, we've had our fun now. So last week, John, and it took us a little while to come back around to this. We had our annual ITR NFIB Tax Day Luncheon. New location this year. We did it at the Des Moines downtown Hilton. It was a great venue, did a great job. Really just had a tremendous event, I thought.
It was very nice.
Had Grover Norquist from Americans for Tax Reform there. It was our keynote speaker. And then had a legislative panel with Representative Bobby Kaufmann and Senator Dan Dawson, who are the two chairmen of the House and Senate Ways and Means Committee. What were your... Tell me a little. You've known Grover a long time, and his comment, his remarks. So you give the folks a little flavor. I don't have any clips of the Grover comments, but
he's very. I think he's very humorous. I mean, for those who attended, I think he and Art Laffer are two economists that can really make talking about taxes enjoyable because they add humor to their remarks. And I think the best thing I took away from Grover's speech was, one, that people are watching Iowa. And he said this. He said other states are watching what Iowa's doing because of, and he highlighted two specific policies, of course, what we've done on the tax front and then on school choice. And I think that was neat for attendees to hear it, even legislators who were there to hear that what's being done in Iowa is truly having national implications because the good policies are being done, and I think Grover reminded us of that, and especially on the tax front. I mean, Iowa has been and hopefully will continue to be a tax leader, and I think Grover shared that message. He also talked about the benefits of a flat tax and then the importance of going to zero eventually, but also doing it in a responsible way. And the other thing is he talked about, and I think this is important, is just the forces we're fighting against, and that is the tax, what he calls the tax eaters. Mm-hmm. And it's a huge battle that we're up against.
He also referenced the Takings Coalition.
Yes,
which is kind of good. The people that are sitting around the table trying to.
Yes.
A couple of things that struck me about Grover's comments is, he has a chart, and we've all seen it before, of control of Congress and that how many Republicans are in it, and in his mind, his assertion is that the Republican Revolution of 1994, which was Newt Gingrich and all which really switched from a long period of mostly Democrat control of Congress to predominantly Republican control of Congress, which has endured to this day.
Yes, yeah.
Is that win was due in large part to a commitment to not raising taxes.
Yes.
And coupled with that assertion is that belief that George H.W. Bush lost his 92 reelect because he raised taxes after pledging not to. So it's an interesting take, and it's hard. It's hard to argue with that. And we've had that here in Iowa. Mm-hmm. The cornerstone piece in Iowa of the legislative trifecta since 2016 has been tax cuts.
Yes, yeah.
And it's what our folks have campaigned on. It's what the governor's campaigned on and have continued to be rewarded for ongoing majorities and re-election. And the number one piece of the positive message that's being offered by the governor and legislators has been tax cuts.
Yeah.
So I think that all sort of fits together.
I think you're absolutely right. And that's, we were talking about the Buchanan campaign sign, and that's one of the reasons he challenged HW in 1992 was that he broke he famously said, "Read my lips, no new taxes." He broke that pledge. And Pat Buchanan challenged him for the Republican nomination. And you said in your remarks on tax day, just referencing the not just the ITR Foundation poll, but the Des Moines Register poll that shows a commanding majority of Iowans supporting more tax relief in the taxpayer protection amendments.
The only issue in this election, this is kind of a side note, that seems to work to the benefit of Republicans and conservatives as much as tax policy is maybe immigration and the border.
Yes, yeah.
But these are the issues that not only are conservatives on the right side of them on public opinion by wide margins, but they're the issues that people are talking about.
Yes.
And so, if we're just thinking about the raw politics of it, which we're not, and we're going to play some clips about this, but the raw politics is Republicans should absolutely be working on what their next tax bill is.
Yeah.
At everywhere, specifically in Iowa, because that's what voters have rewarded them.
That's right.
So the other thing that Grover talks about, and I appreciate it, is that it's not just vote Republican. And he has been critical in the past of Republicans that don't sort of follow this tax pledge idea or just don't work for tax cuts in general. Is that and that's something that this organization has been built on. Is we're the voice of the taxpayers. We're not the voice of the Republicans.
Yes.
Now, in this current, look, Kim Reynolds, Republican governor of Iowa, is a champion for taxpayers, and so we are been very supportive of her, and certainly a lot of strong leaders in the legislature for tax reform and relief that are Republicans, but especially at the federal level, that's not always the case.
That's right.
And so, he had some good comments on that I think were a good reminder that it's not just Team Red versus Team Blue here.
Yeah.
It's taxpayers versus the takers.
Yeah. There's an old saying that you can't out-deal the New Deal, and basically it refers to that Republicans in the past that try to spend money to earn Democratic support, it just doesn't work. You're not gonna get that constituency to support you.
Well, I think the same thing, which has been going on certainly since I got involved in Iowa politics, continues to this day, is Republicans that want to try and chase down public education voters by offering more and more in school funding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, maybe they believe it's the right thing to do, and I take no issue with that because that's an arbitrary number. What's the right amount of supplemental state aid every year?
Yeah.
But you're not going to out-Democrat the Democrats.
No.
They will always outflank you. They could come out with 10% school funding.
That's right.
The Democrats would say it was being underfunded because they were at 11.
Yeah.
It will never be enough, and you just can't chase it down.
You're absolutely right.
So you set the amount you think is the right amount to do that you can afford, and go with that number. But if you expect them to hold a parade in the streets back in your hometown because you came up with a little bit more school funding, it's not going to happen. They will will criticize. So, okay. So after we had Grover at Tax Day, we had the legislative panel, which I thought was great, mainly because I was up front part of it. But John, you're supposed to laugh at these.
You did do a good job, though.
But I was really happy with both Representative Kaufmann and Senator Dawson, who both were really communicated very well on what they're doing at the Capitol and why. And So it was really encouraging to listen to the two of them because they do have different styles on
how
they do it, and but yet they're really both trying to get to the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try and play some clips here. This is going to really push my technological abilities to the limits. The first one here is hopefully, if I do this right, is going to be about the constitutional amendments. So I'm going to try and play this.
And I think for me, it's equally as important how we sell this back home. And I want to talk about that for a minute, is how, where I see I've got folks from back home here that go to all of my town halls back home, and I always start with one thing. Who do you trust more with your money? The government or families? And I'm always going to err on the side of families. And we make that argument each time we have a tax debate back home. And it's the same thing with the constitutional amendment. It should be much harder to raise taxes than it should be to lower them.
So that's Representative Kaufmann on why he wants to get the constitutional amendment on the 2/3 supermajority raise taxes done. Thoughts on that?
I really liked how he phrased that because it really personalized this issue, and he's absolutely right. I mean, who do you trust with the money? Is it government or is it families? Is it businesses? And Grover sort of mentioned that in his remarks too. But I think Representative Kaufmann was correct to really personalize it, that it's individual Iowans that know how to use their money better than the government, and it should be harder to raise. It should be more difficult to raise taxes.
Yeah, I want to add on to that a little bit more from Representative Kaufmann. He had. Talking about individual budgets, and I think I got this right. So this is a little bit more from that comment.
We're hearing about the silent tax increase that is rampant right now due to the mumbling, fumbling, stumbling moron that we have in the White House with inflation. I hear about it every single day.
So that's Representative Kaufmann later on talking about the hidden tax of inflation. And if you don't like the rumbling, stumbling moron comment in reference to President Biden, we clipped off the rest of that comment, which got even more colorful.
Yeah.
So thoughts on that?
Again, he's absolutely right. And inflation is the worst form of taxation because it eats away your wages, it eats away your savings, and Iowans are struggling. I don't care how many egghead economists on national TV say the economy is starting to do better. People are still struggling.
Well, John, they're saying the economy is doing better because the rate of inflation is slowing down.
Yeah,
it's because the price of of the things you buy isn't growing as fast. So now we should all celebrate Joe Biden.
Yeah, I was
Bidenomics, right?
I was at I don't know if I can identify the grocery store I shop at, but I just the other day I went and just one bag of groceries, one plastic bag, and it was almost $50.
Memo to our Iowa grocers out there. We'd be happy to mention what grocery store John Hendrickson shops at, but you'll have to sponsor the ITR Live podcast. We're not giving this away for free.
That's right. Yeah.
So anyway, that's right. And that's real. So I think that's important. So next up here, we've got Senator Dawson talking about property taxes. Now, we spent a lot of time, John, talking about more counties, but cities and counties really lamenting last year's tax bill and how onerous it was and it's broken, and criticizing legislators and that they got to fix this, right? So here's Senator Dawson on property taxes.
If anyone thinks that what we did last year was a mistake, they are dramatically wrong on that. But way back in the day, centuries ago, generals, when they would land on the shore, they would burn the landing craft as a sign to their troops that there's no going back, we are only going forward. So what I tell all local governments in the most nicest way possible is that the landing craft is burnt and there is no going back on property taxes, and the legislature is always only going forward on reforms.
So I think it'd be pretty difficult for him to be any more clear on what's going on property taxes.
Absolutely, and I hope a lot of local governments hear this. In fact, I've heard him say this analogy before, and he's absolutely right, because there's been tons of media stories saying that their budgets are being slashed. And what this does, and I believe Senator Dawson said this at Tax Day, was that all it does is it prevents them from collecting the full amount of windfalls from assessment increases. So in a sense, it slows the growth of how much they can collect from those assessment windfalls. It's not a cut.
Right.
And and I've always said it's only in government where you slow the growth of something, it's seen as a cut.
So, well said. The last clip I've got here, I'm going to go back to Representative Kaufmann again. I tried to explore with these guys kind of their mindset when they craft these tax plans. And you hear things like called runs or budget runs or whatever, and what drives the determination of how low and what rate they can set. And they're often criticized by the opponents of tax policy. We've heard this over and over, that Iowa's going to be the next Kansas and can't afford this, and budget catastrophe and all this. So I think Representative Kaufmann does a good job of talking about this right here.
And for me, it's about the why. Why are we doing all the runs? Why are we being so thorough in forecasting what it looks like? And that is because of the last question. It's because of trust. Because Iowans trust that when we say something's going to be a certain way, we've done the runs and done the math to make sure that it's followed through with, and that they're going to still receive the services they expect with the low taxation that they also expect.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually asked that question, because even though it gets technical, it's something I think we all need to know, because it's you just, sometimes we think, why can't they just cut the rate? And it's not that easy, because one, Iowa has to balance their budget. That's a requirement by law. And also you have to make sure that that you do tax cuts responsibly, so you don't create a problem which creates a deficit. So you need to do these, what you said, these tax runs, this analysis, to see what impact a potential cut will have. And this is why you can have safeguards such as triggers or something like that. And so I think what we've seen is the legislature has really done a responsible job of cutting taxes and getting those rates lower in Iowa, because they've been doing this with prudence. And so it's, some people may get frustrated because they think, well, why can't we just go to a zero income tax today? Well, you just can't do that. And so it takes a lot of time. And also, you're really working with a lot of uncertainties, because, the economy can change on a dime. And COVID taught us, these black swan events can just surface and create all kinds of problems. And so it's better to handle these things with prudence and to be careful about it and to gradually do it and to do it right, than to just rush into it.
And I agree with all of that, John. And I think they've largely done it the right way over the past 7 years. But there still is a need to go lower.
Absolutely.
From right here.
Yeah.
The state is still collecting $1 billion more in revenue every year.
Yeah. And
than it needs for its priority needs. And there's $3.5–4 billion that we're going to have in the taxpayer relief fund. That those dollars need to be repurposed back into tax cuts.
Yes.
Or going back to Grover's idea of the tax eaters and the takings coalition, the longer those dollars are there, the more those forces for government spending are going to come consume it.
And the other scary part about that, you're absolutely right. And the other scary part is what we're seeing in other states is because there's such a tremendous demand for property tax relief, the pressure grows to use that surplus money in the taxpayer relief fund to, in a sense, what they would call buy down property tax rates, which is like putting Band-Aid on the wound, and it's not going to solve anything.
I'm glad you brought that up, John, because I want to close on this. Looking ahead to property taxes, which Senator Dawson said is a 2025 issue that he's, we have a small bill this year, but that 2025 after the election is going to be a property tax year. And we will reiterate this time and time again. The solution to your property tax bill, it lies in local government spending.
Yes.
If you want to have real, meaningful property tax relief, the only meaningful solution is to have local government spend less.
That's it. Yep.
How we get there can take a number of different forms, but the underlying cause, the underlying root is how much they spend. And we have to get our hands around that. It is not in shifting money around in the legislature, and it's not in complicated formulas. It's not a math problem. It's a spending problem. And so we have to keep that in mind as we think about property tax reform.
Yeah. I just want to close with one more comment, because you reminded me when you asked when you asked the question on tax day about, how do we do taxes in terms of the runs and so forth. It kind of reminded me of, and our listeners won't be familiar with this, but when you and the former director of the Department of Management, Dave Roeder, spoke at the one of the conferences we went to. It was a national conference with different state policy groups, and you were on the panel, and Dave Roeder was on the panel, and you guys had the the real life experience of working with state budgets, working in the legislature. I mean, you ushered through at that time the biggest tax cut in state history, and that experience is needed, because even in a group of policy experts, it's sometimes we're sitting in, as they say, the glass tower, and we don't really know what the nuts and bolts are, and so that was valuable experience for even policy experts to hear from both you guys. And I'm still getting feedback from that from colleagues in different think tanks about how. In fact, I got an email last night from a guy talking about that.
Yeah.
So I think that's important, because this is technical. It's very serious, but having that experience is very much valuable.
Yeah.
So,
no, I think that's a great point. And we're going to just continue to do what we do in our role in all of this, is to provide information, provide messaging, to get Iowans continuing to think about taxes, to create the political environment where it's easier for our leaders to do these things, because they've been great on the issue.
Yeah.
But it's not just one person or one idea. It takes a lot to get these kinds of big transformational things done. So Tax Day was a big success. I'm sure we'll be doing it again next year. So if you missed it this year, circle your calendars for sometime in March next year that we'll probably do it again. So
I think this was a record turnout this year, I think. I think this was...
I'll have to go back. Did we add that up? We had the year we had the governor right before she signed the big bill was pretty big too, but they were close. Yeah. So it was great. It had a good number of legislators there. It was great. The whole event was great, and we're happy to put it on. So we look forward to doing it again, and thanks to our friends at NFIB and Matt Everson for being a part of that. And we're going to continue working for a lot of those shared ideas. So, all right, John, we covered a lot of ground today. So
we did.
I'm excited to get this one out. So anyway, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to leave us a positive review, and don't forget to check us out on YouTube and Rumble. And with all of that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.